Hi, and welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, the most important United States Senate race in the country has less than 3 weeks to go. An update on that important race. And then October is International Credit Union Month. Some segments on that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host.
Hi, and welcome back to the program. Terry Madonna here for Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, less than 3 weeks to go. The U.S. Senate race is sizzling hot in the state of Pennsylvania between, of course, incumbent Rick Santorum and his challenger, Bob Casey. Joining me, as often is the case, are two of our regular contributors, John Micek from the Allentown Call and Tony Romeo from KYW and KDKA. I did that perfectly for a change. I usually mess something up. All right, look, you guys have been following this race about as close as anyone. Tony, you were involved in one of the debates. Let me start with you. What in the final couple of weeks is really going to matter in this Senate race, do you think?
Well, let me put that back on you. As a pollster, is there anything you see that Rick Santorum can do to turn the tide around? You could see the frustration, I think, on his face
during the course of these. How many debates were there? 4?
Well, there were 4 total, including the Meet the Press appearance. So there were 3 recently. There were 3 from Thursday in Pittsburgh, and then 2 in Monday in Philadelphia, including one that would aired on KYW and KDKA.
And one of them was a wild and woolly affair.
That was the Thursday one in Pittsburgh.
The one out in Pittsburgh. Okay, well, let's just go through this. Casey is sort of laying in the weeds. He's got this lead. He's not doing too much to create any opening for the senator, right? Now, lately, Santorum has gotten on the immigration subject. Is that something, I mean, as you talk to voters out there and get involved in interviews, it's a pretty important issue, but is that enough, John Micek?
It's one of the, I mean, immigration is one of these weird issues that really excites the Republican base, but when you talk to a broad swath of voters, you know, it ranks down below the economy, it ranks down below pocketbook issues in their list of top priorities. It's not until you ask them about it specifically, as is the case with these wedge issues, that they get excited about it. The senators latched onto it, and again, this is something that gets the Republican base really excited, which is what he needs on Election Day. He needs his voters to come out. But whether that's going to be enough to sort of cut across and get voters to defect from Mr. Casey, I don't think so.
Well, let's go back to this issue that you talked about. The senator's been not arguably behind now for the better part of a year. Closed the gap a little bit over the summer. It may or may not have spread a little bit, but it's 7, 8, 9, 10 percentage points. And the sense that you have from being up close and personal with him is he appears, you know, that he's frustrated, that he can't quite find something. Am I wrong about that?
That seems to be the impression that he leaves. And in fact, I think the Rock'em Sock'em debate you saw in Pittsburgh on Thursday, just my observation that I think the senator came out with the idea that I've got to try to knock this guy off his base, knock him, get him, rattle him, and try to make him look bad. And again, that's just an observation. Whether that was his intention or not, I'm not sure. But that seemed to be what was happening, because just winning at the debate does not seem to be good enough for Rick Santorum. Bob Casey seems to be in a position where, in these debates, not making a mistake would seem to be the primary mission.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Farrick from the Inquirer had a great column this week where he compared the Philadelphia debate to the satirical 1988 presidential debate on Saturday Night Live between Mike Dukakis and George Bush, where Dukakis, played by John Lovitz, just looks aghast at Dana Carvey's Bush and says, "I can't believe I'm losing to this guy." And it's really the same thing. You can see Santorum's face. He was looking for an opening, and Casey, by virtue of not really saying anything and ducking and weaving, wasn't giving him the opening, and you could just tell that it was driving him nuts. One of the other things that the one enduring impression you come away with from this debate is that these guys viscerally don't like each other. There's that respect between warriors where you can come to the field and respect each other. Like between Patton and Rommel, for instance.
Or even maybe like Swan and Rendell.
But I mean,
in those debates, they don't seem to get personal.
But from the opening bell to the last question, I mean, it just leaps off the screen at you.
Yeah, I think you're right. But look, the senator has tried to make over and over again this point that Casey doesn't have any positions on the issues, that when he does take a position, it's contradictory. and then he doesn't show up for work, and then he just seeks one office after another. But, Tony, none of that seems to work. It just doesn't seem, rightly or wrongly, we're not getting into whether it's right or wrong.
Well, the first question that I posed to the senator in our debate on KYW and KDKA on Monday morning was, is this election a referendum on you? Mm-hmm. You've been behind in the polls. There's a perception, polling data, you would be able to say, seem to suggest he's alienated voters by positions that he's taken, and that Casey's strategy seems to be to make Rick Santorum run against Rick Santorum.
And the other issue here, I think you're right about that, and the other issue is the president, whose approval rating is low. So it seems every other word that Casey utters is
George Bush.
The failed policies of
George Bush. Yeah. It's a god-awful year to be Republican.
It really is.
Anywhere. It doesn't even matter. You could be Republican running on Venus, and it would still be bad news, just because of the problems with President Bush, the problems with the Republican-controlled Congress, dissatisfaction over the Iraq War. All of that is dragging down Republicans everywhere, and Rick Santorum's feeling the brunt of it.
All right, we're chatting with Tony Romeo and John Micek, two reporters. We'll be back in a moment to continue our discussion about the red-hot, nationally covered U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania between Senator Santorum and Bob Casey when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers with John Micek and Tony Romeo, two of the state's top reporters. We're chatting about the red-hot U.S. Senate race. Is that a wrong description? We've been talking about how important the biggest national race, national reporters all over the country, foreign journalists. You bump into them in the streets of your city, Philadelphia. I mean,
we're flipping to the back of the big book, Political Cliches now. We're running out of ways to describe this.
But go ahead.
It is. You know, there are maybe 2 or 3 marquee Senate races in the country, and this is one of them. It's cliche, it's awful, but it's the unavoidable truth.
But the fact of the matter is that even though there have been, I don't know, by the end of it, probably $15 to $20 million spent in television commercials. We'll know what that is later. The race still hasn't changed very much, Tony, but Santorum is not out of it. I mean, 7, 8, 9 points with a couple of weeks to go. Is anybody willing to say it's over? I mean, there is still a chance that this guy could pull this off.
I would posit to you as a pollster the question that the perception among many observers is that Santorum is a polarizing figure. Do guys like that tend to underpoll? Do you, in polling situations, get people who say, oh, I'm not going to vote for him, but then they do something different when they go into the polling booth? Frank Rizzo, the late mayor of Philadelphia, was somebody who used to confound pollsters. I guess that's one wild card.
I don't know that he's confounded pollsters, but he is an indefatigable campaigner.
You write him off at your peril, and that's as simple as that.
Even though all the odds look at the moment like they favor Casey,
the conventional wisdom that the momentum was on Casey's side, that Casey emerged pretty good from the debates, but the race is within the margin.
It's close. That's right.
So I don't know how sensibly you ascribe this as a win to either side.
All right. Look, you both referred to earlier about this the environment, which is not very good for Republicans. Everybody agrees. Here in Pennsylvania, in the state legislature, where the House Democrats need 8 seats to capture control, they haven't done that since 1994. And the Senate, it's 29-21, so what they would need 5, probably not likely in the Senate. But say something, talk a little bit about this environment and these hot, important House races that don't get covered statewide, they get covered sort of regionally. John, I'll start with you.
The Democrats, for the first time in a decade plus, see the majority that's actually realistically within their reach. Some of that incumbent ire that's affecting Mr. Santorum and some of the congressional candidates trickles down. Right. But obviously we have a different set of dynamics at the legislative level. You've got that leftover pay raise angst. You've got a ton of competitive races, like a half dozen competitive races in suburban Philadelphia that could turn the tables either way. It's tremendously volatile.
Yeah. You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is probably the best shot that the Democrats have had certainly since they lost control. And, of course, we're going to have to see just how much antipathy lingers over the pay raise and the reform issues that it spawned, particularly in south central Pennsylvania, western part of the state.
So let me ask you this question. As you two guys have been covering this stuff for a long time. I think, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, I think this year there are going to be another set of surprises out there in this general election in these House races. Do you agree?
Oh.
I mean, some that we just don't think about.
Well, you got 40-something open seats. God only knows what can happen in that set of circumstances. I mean, it's the old trope holds true that these are all insanely individual races. So there's going to be 3, 4, 5 surprises when we all wake up.
And remember, these are districts in which you may only get 10 or 12 or 15,000 voters, and a lot of people can go door to door and do a lot of personal stuff, and it's below the radar.
Yes.
No?
Yeah, there's no question about it.
And, okay, do you agree with John that there's a chance, now I've put the chance at 40%, now who knows, that's a guess, that the House can switch from, State House can switch from Democratic, from Republican to Democratic. You think that's a crazy statement to make?
Not at all. I think there's a chance. I wouldn't bet on it, I guess, if I had a gun to my head and had to pick what's going to happen here. But I think that, as was referenced a minute ago, you have so many open seats.
Right.
There's so many factors. There's the pay raise anger. There is anti-incumbent sentiment for a lot of other reasons. You have the increasing in Philadelphia suburbs, the going from red to blue, and the counties outside of Philadelphia that were once staunch Republican strongholds. There's a lot going on here that could swing individual races anyway.
All right, before you go, John, I want to turn just quickly. Governor's race, quick update. There doesn't seem to be much changing here. They're out campaigning hard. Lynn Swan has not been able to kind of, even though he's gotten much better, you both agree?
Yes.
I think he's got a better command. He's now the candidate, I think some thought he could have been last spring. Do you see any change in the governor's race? Governor Rendell, 16, 17, 18-point lead?
I mean, our poll with Muhlenberg College showed Rendell up by 27 points.
Yeah.
Swan's got a difficult row to hoe. I mean, much like the Casey Santorum race, he's been throwing everything under the sun at Rendell, and it hasn't stuck.
All right, thanks for the great update. Okay, when we come back, it's International Credit Union Month. We're going to talk with our friends from the Credit Union Association of Pennsylvania and check in with them and find out what International Credit Union Month is all about when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania, and by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. It's that time of the year. It's International Credit Union Month. We're always joined by our friends during that month from the Credit Union Association of Pennsylvania. Joining me, as you have in the past, is Norb Kaczmarek, who is the CEO of the Erie Federal Credit Union. I got that right?
Got that right, Terry.
And Keith Welks, who is Special Counsel to Treasurer Bob Casey. All right, boy, we got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about the Better Choice Program and predatory lending, something that I feel very strongly about, and these folks are doing great work to deal with this problem. But let's start, first of all, with you, Norb. Let's talk about International Credit Union Month. Quickly, what is that?
Well, it's a chance for the credit unions to celebrate their the good things that they do and make their mission mostly available, knowledgeable to the general public. And we designate October as International Credit Union Month, and we have a lot of festivities that try to bring the credit union name out to the general public.
General public. All right. Now, one of the important programs that you all have developed, and it's not a new program. It began, I think, in 2006, because I think we've talked about this in a general way one time before on the program, is this Better Choice Program. Tell me about the Better Choice Program.
Well, the Better Choice Program is really a alternative to payday lending. Payday lending is a predatory lending practice that we feel is targets the people can least afford to pay the fees.
Yep. All right. Keith, let's go to you. You're in the Treasury Department. You're the expert on this. What I'd like you to do is to talk about what I think is referred to as the payday lending trap. So here, walk through this situation. You're someone who's not very well off. You need money. What do people who find themselves in that situation before they get paid? Maybe what do they do?
They go to payday lenders. One thing I think it's important to note as I walk through the sequence, Terry, is that there's often an impression that payday borrowers are at the lowest end of the economic strata, and that's incorrect. One of the things that's essential in a payday loan context is that, as the borrower, you have a paycheck that you can show the lender. So right away, we're talking about people who are employed. Exactly right. Okay. We're talking about working families, working individuals, people who are, in fact, struggling to build some wealth and advance themselves.
But they might need money between the time...
Exactly.
Between the periods they get paid.
Exactly.
And that is when they do what?
They turn to a payday lender. They go into a payday lender and they ask to take out a loan. The payday lender generally asks to see their paycheck. The loan that they can get is often in the amount of the next paycheck that they'll receive based on the paycheck that they've displayed. They have to pay a fee, generally $25 per 100 that they borrow. They also pay interest on that.
Hold on. $25 for every 100.
Often it's at that rate. That's correct. So
there used to be a name for that in the Middle Ages. You know what it was? Usury.
Right. Well,
it used to be called usury, and it used to be a sin.
Well, there are some who would call it usury today, Terry. I don't think
I'm allowed to say that. You don't have to say that. I'll say that.
Times haven't changed that much.
Yeah, okay.
You have to then, in order to essentially secure your payday loan, you have to write a check of your own and give it to the payday lender, post-dating it, so that the payday lender is already holding your repayment. Now, if you imagine that you're taking out a loan in the entire amount of your paycheck, when your next paycheck arrives and you have to turn it entirely over to the payday lender, you're left with nothing to feed your family. Hence the trap. You show up at the payday lenders and they'll be happy to roll over your loan for another $25 fee. And it goes on and on and on.
Okay, so in order to obviate that, eliminate that, you folks have gotten involved in this with a program with the State Treasurer's Office, and walk through some of the details of that.
Well, our program is very similar to... in terms of the amount of money we lend, it's up to $500 cover for emergencies, and we're going to charge a $25 application fee, and then we will simply charge up to 18%. That's the maximum application fee, and up to 18% interest. The program itself has different components to it. One is the fact we're going to charge a lot less money.
Okay.
One is that we're going to do some credit counseling with these individuals to try to get them out of the trap.
All right, when we come back, I want to go to a break, but I want to come back to, so the difference is you're going to charge them what we could call the usual and customary interest that, banks and credit unions and others would charge if you go into lend, and then you're going to say, okay, there's some problems here, you need to understand them, and you're going to walk them through some consumer explanation. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, we're talking about the Better Choice program, a program developed by the Credit Union Association of Pennsylvania and the State Treasurer's Office. We'll continue with that when we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. We're talking about the Better Choice program, a program established by the Credit Union Association of Pennsylvania with the State Treasurer's Office. All right, now there was a great update on what predatory lending is and how it functions, but there are some differences between this program and the lending schemes used by these so-called predatory lenders. Let's just talk about those for a minute.
Our program is really designed to break the cycle of payday lending. So we do have a credit counseling component of it where we try to help the individuals really break that cycle by maybe better financial planning. It also has a savings component. 10% of what they borrow will go into a savings account. And this may be the first time many of these individuals have saved money so that the next time they have an emergency, they don't really have to go to a payday lender or even come back to us.
Go ahead. Yep.
I was going to say a couple of things that complement that really distinguish this program. Number one, there's no collateral required. You don't have to post-date a check that the lender holds over your head. Number two, you don't have to pay back in 2 weeks. You're not locked into your pay cycle. The pay term for the loan is 90 days. So you get 3 months, and you can do it in installments. So you're not obligated to come up with a giant lump sum payment at one point. Those are the things that push people into the debt cycle. Finally, the credit unions will not let you roll over this loan. You cannot simply pay the fee again and extend your period for 90 days. They're looking for you to pay it off and start again. They want you to help build wealth, accumulate wealth, not become impoverished.
Sort of to avoid a cycle of debt, right?
Exactly.
So that you just don't compound it by borrowing more and just pay the interest. You know, often when we have, a colleague, Mike Wishnow, on here, he's always talking about this problem of watching the credit cards not just simply paying the interest and interest, but you got to get rid of that principal.
Exactly.
It's sort of, is that the same, in a sense, the same thing?
It's the same. In a sense, it is the same thing. You have to knock that debt down, and if you don't do it with a credit card, you're just going to end up with a higher debt and continue to pay the interest.
I notice here that there are a number of credit unions that are participating. Talk a little bit about credit unions and their options to participate or not participate in the program.
Well, as of now, we have 31 credit unions that have signed up for the program, and we have 113 branches across the state that are going to be offering this program. And there's going to be more signing up over the next couple of weeks.
And then finally, let's say the Treasury Department is working with the credit unions for this Better Choice program. How in what way?
We've done a couple things. First, we were very pleased that the staff of the credit union was willing to let us participate in helping develop this program, building in the savings component. Secondly, Treasurer Casey has been very involved in encouraging credit unions to sign up. He participated in a webinar. He sent them a letter explaining how important this program was. And perhaps most importantly, we're making a deposit of $20 million into the credit union system, into an interest-bearing account. This is a gesture of support and recognition for all the credit unions have done.
All right, Keith gets the last word. Keith, Norb, thanks. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. I'll get that out, and stay well. Just stay here a minute. Good job.
Thank you.